This is the AHSAA Weekly, your inside look at everything happening with the Alabama High School Athletic Association, presented by America's First Federal Credit Union. I'm John Holder. Coming up on this week's program, we will look ahead to this week's AHSAA Game of the Week here on WOTM. The Central High School Red Devils of Phoenix City playing host to the Oxford Yellow Jackets. We'll hear from both coaches, Central Phoenix City's Patrick Nix and also Sam Adams of the Oxford Yellow Jackets. We will also have a recap of two big games from last week. We'll talk about the Hoover-Thompson game in Class 7A and then go all the way down to Class 1A and recap our Game of the Week from last week between Maplesville and Autaugaville. And we will be joined by WOTM's Gerhard Mathangani as we preview the Alabama High School Athletic Association State Football Playoffs. All of that and more on this week's edition of the AHSAA Weekly, presented by America's First Federal Credit Union.
Every bank has their own app, but it's just that, theirs. At AmFirst, our app was made for you, so you can personalize your dashboard, pay your bills, and redeem points for rewards you'll love. Get the app made for you at AmFirst.
We are back on the AHSAA Weekly, presented by America's First Federal Credit Union. We are going to spend some time now with WOTM's Gerhard Mathangani. You see and hear Gerhard every Thursday night with our AHSAA Game of the Week as he joins up with Mickey Shadricks to bring you one of the top high school football games around the state of Alabama. A keen observer of high school football in the state because he sees teams from all over the state every week right here on WOTM. Gerhard, glad to have you with us. We're going to talk some playoffs with you this week on the AHSAA Weekly.
Good deal. It's always the best time of year. You know this as well. As the march to a state championship, this little 5-week run, and they say the old cliches about your records don't really matter until you get to the playoffs, but records have a lot to do with where you are in the playoffs. So it's a really fun time of year, just battling it all out to that first week of December.
One of the things, Gerhard, that we want to invite people to watch, we want them to join us here on WOTM. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. We will do it again this coming Saturday morning right here live. We will bring you the coaches meeting. Every high school head football coach in the state of Alabama that makes the playoffs, that's over 200, will be gathering in Montgomery for a meeting to discuss playoffs, to set the bracket and those kinds of things. And we will bring you that, and we will set the bracket and have a lot of great information about the playoffs live right here on Saturday morning. One of the things that we want to talk about as far as playoffs, though, is, Gerhard, the thing's not set yet because there's a tie-breaking system that's going on. What happens is, and we'll get into this in just a moment, teams have to qualify out of the region they're in, 7, 8-team regions. And right now, we've got quite a few regions across the state that are in three-way ties. And so we're having to go to non-region games this week to determine sometimes who's even in and out of the playoffs, and certainly to decide who's at home and who's away in those seedings.
That's why I love football, because you get these situations where a couple of phone calls in the offseason to schedule non-region games have this humongous ripple effect as you move forward throughout the year. Because those non-region games might end up mattering because of seeding in the playoffs, it makes it really interesting. And then now we have a situation, like you said, we are now in week 11, week 10. If you look at, if you talk about that week 0, we're now in the 11th week of football, where 4 quarters of football really matter as to where you play next week in the playoffs, what seed you're in. And so it really makes a big difference. And a lot of people talk about, scheduling and whatnot. They kind of take these small things for granted. But now here we are in these monster matchups coming up this week to make big time decisions as we move forward. You talked about that bracket reveal show. What I love about that show is a lot of the seedings really get clarified and crystallized as we talk about it. And you kind of see a behind the scenes look at the way these next 5 weeks will be handled as we try to crown a champion in high school football.
And Gerhard, one of those unique games that's coming up this week, not only is it the likely number 3 team in 5A playing the number 2 team in 3A, that's a big game in and of itself. We're talking about Alexandria, the 5A, playing Piedmont, the 3A. And whether Piedmont's 1 or 3, whether they're home or away in the region in the playoffs, is going to be determined on how they do in a non-region game against a 5A opponent in Alexandria. And people are like, why is Piedmont have to beat a 5A school to qualify to be the region champions? That's because there's a 3-way tie in that region with Piedmont and Sachs and AHSAA, and those teams beat each other head-to-head, so it goes to non-region games. And Gerhard, here we go. That's one of the greatest examples, I think, maybe the best example in the state this week of a non-region game mattering mightily as far as who goes to the playoffs and where they play in the first round.
100%. I think you really can't do anything to forecast how well a team will do. But it's kind of like in college football. If you want to get your schedule and you want every team on your schedule to win as many games as possible to make your schedule look good. We see some of the same things here in high school football. Obviously, Piedmont didn't know Alexandria was going to be undefeated, and Alexandria didn't know Piedmont was going to have another strong year. But we're now in a situation, as you said, a three-way tie. So the wins that Alexandria has had over the season has really been a big benefit to Piedmont if Piedmont can go be able to get that win coming up on Friday. It just speaks to what we are dealing with here as the playoffs come around, and it speaks to how important that seeding is. Either you play that game in the Field of Champions week 1, or you go on the road week 1 of the playoffs. It's got major gravity. Of course, it's going to be a good game as well. Even if these playoff implications weren't on the table, this was going to be a phenomenal football game. I think a lot of people will have a lot of interest in it anyways. But you add these stakes on top of it, it's even better. But like you said, it's a perfect illustration about how these non-region games really affect the playoffs and really Piedmont's path to what they hope is the state championship run. Will they start it on the road? Will they start it at home? We'll find out coming up on Friday.
And Gerhard, you make a good point there, because it's not just the first round, but if you are a region champion, the way the bracket and the way the rules are, that region champion gets a home field advantage throughout the playoffs. There's a lot of times where they meet lower seeds, teams from the same region. If there's a rematch, that home field advantage kicks in. So this has implications. These teams that are locked in these three-way ties for first, the implications between being 1 and 3, not only for the first round, but for later rounds. We're going to talk in just a moment kind of how that works, but that is huge for all the rounds of the playoffs until they get to the Super 7.
It's exactly right. And it makes your path a little bit different and difficult, especially if you have to go on the road. Then you have to go to a hostile environment in a place that you don't really know, depending on which region you match up with. And then this team within that region, you might be taking a long bus trip. You might be taking a very short bus trip, just depending on the way that the matchups are set. So it has a lot of importance, and it has a lot of clear-cut importance as we move on. And the seedings are one thing, I think, but then I think the other thing on the backside of that is the matchups that it creates. Obviously, if you're the 1 seed, you get rewarded, so to speak, of being that 1 seed and facing the 4 seed in another region. And the 2 and 3, to me, is always the more interesting matchups, because you have 2 teams that are relatively equal, usually on paper. Sometimes you have a tougher region that, hey, the 2 seed could go about winning just about any other region in the state. But then you also have matchups that are upset specials, and maybe top 10 matchups there in that first round. So it's really entertaining, really exciting. It'll be good to see how it all shakes out.
Gerhard, thank you for joining us here on the AHSAA Weekly to talk about this. The bottom line is, even though these are non-region games this week, a lot of these matter greatly this coming Friday night and Thursday night across the great state of Alabama. Gerhard, thank you so much for spending time with us here on the AHSAA Weekly.
Thank you for having me on, John. We'll talk soon.
Our very own Gerhard Mathangani from WOTM joining us here on the AHSAA Weekly, presented by America's First Federal Credit Union.
Looking for a perfect checking account? Don't waste your time. No minimum balance, no monthly fees, and a convenient app. Now you could try and find that at a bank, or you could save yourself the trouble by checking with us.
This week is the last week of the regular season of high school football, and we've got another very attractive matchup here on WOTM with our AHSAA Game of the Week. It is the Oxford Yellow Jackets out of Class 6A traveling to Phoenix City to take on the Central Red Devils. We caught up with the coaches of both teams, Central Phoenix City's Patrick Nix and Oxford's Sam Adams. Coach, glad to have you with us again on the AHSAA Weekly.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me on.
Coach, let's just talk about your football team first and foremost, heading into a game on Friday night with Fort Payne, a region title really at stake for your football team. You played some really good football, it seems, the last couple of weeks, had a monumental win on the road at ARAB a couple of weeks ago, had another road region win at Springville last week. It seems like right now that your football team is playing the best it's played all season.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. We're really getting into the games that people will remember the most when you get late into region play and starting the playoff season. I think hopefully we're peaking at the right time. We've had a young group that has a lot more experience under their belt than they did to start the season, obviously, and I think we've developed a lot in the last 5 or 6 weeks or so.
Coach, you started off, as you mentioned, with a very young team to begin with, and then Pleasant Grove and Scottsboro, those 2 games there, you suffered a lot of injuries, and injuries to key people like your starting quarterback and your starting tailback. But now those guys are coming back. You seem like you're also maybe the healthiest that you've been in this 2021 season.
Yeah, definitely so. 2 weeks ago when we played ARAB, that was the first time that we had our entire roster available since we played James Clemens in the Jamboree game before the season started. So, obviously that makes a big difference having, all the guys back. And now we've, throughout the course of the season, having to sub guys in for those injured guys, we've developed a lot more depth by moving some guys around and having them play multiple positions. So, we're not really practicing the way that a lot of 6A teams may practice, the guys going on both sides, but it's definitely made us a better football team as the year's gone on.
Coach Adams, tell us about some of the players that folks around the state can look for when they look in and watch this Oxford and Central game coming up on the 28th.
Defensively, kind of have 3 guys that sort of lead the way there. Miguel Mitchell plays safety and corner. He's a Vandy commit. And then our 2 outside linebackers, Jordan Dobbins and Shaynon Whitfield, are just excellent players. Miguel was selected to play in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. It'll be coming up, right after the season. And Shaynon and Jordan were selected to play in the AHSAA North-South game. So those guys kind of lead the way on that side of the ball. And offensively, Jaden Thomas, sophomore running back, as you said, missed some games during the middle of the year with some injuries. But he's back full go. He's had a couple of big games in a row for us. Sam Robertson's our quarterback. And he's done a great job and really was inexperienced at the beginning of the year, but now he's playing his best football. And Kyle Pilkington, our left tackle, I say left tackle, he could play any of the 5 positions on the offensive line over the course of one game. He's got he's really a unique talent and just one of the best football players I've ever coached.
Coach, I know your focus right now as we speak on Fort Payne, obviously a region title at stake, but just looking ahead, what do you know? What do you think? Your thoughts, early thoughts on this matchup with the Central Red Devils?
Well, I mean, they're one of the best teams in the state. After we've played them, we'll likely have played 4 teams with undefeated records in our non-region play and our Jamboree game combined. So, I mean, it'll be a huge test for us. On paper, they're right up there with the Thompsons and the Hoovers of the state, and they're as loaded as at every position as anybody out there. So, I mean, we'll have to play really well to compete in the game. But I know the personality of our team, I mean, they're going to go out and compete no matter who we're playing against. And, it should be, a good learning experience leading into the playoffs.
Coach, very impressed with the resiliency of your football team this year, overcoming a lot of adversity along the way. And now here you are playing for a region title. Thank you for joining us here on the AHSAA Weekly. Best wishes to your team as you move through the rest of the regular season and into the Class 6A state playoffs.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Go Big O.
Coach, I know your team getting ready for the 7A playoffs next week with the Daphne Trojans coming to town. But before that, big matchup with the Oxford Yellow Jackets coming in. Just your thoughts on the matchup coming up Thursday night with Oxford.
It's a big game, really big game for us. Going in game 9-0, have a chance to go 10-0 for the 4th time in the history of Central High School. And, for our guys, it's a very big opportunity, very big, chance to do something that, that hasn't been done very often. And also just another chance to go out and play football, get ready to go into the playoffs and hopefully go in fully healthy and ready to go and ready to compete for a state championship. And so obviously a very big game for us against a very good football team.
Coach Nix, you mentioned your team being 9-0, undefeated, certainly one of the top teams in this state in any classification. Just tell the folks around the state about this 2021 Central Red Devil football team.
I think probably the special thing about this team is it's not a bunch of individuals. It's a whole bunch of guys making plays. It's not just 1 or 2. We've got some stars, but overall it's a lot of guys making a lot of plays. And, we've had several nights to where you have multiple guys with sacks, multiple guys with turnovers, multiple guys with touchdowns and, things like that. So it's been a team full of of teammates, if that makes sense, of guys that encourage each other and want to play with each other and have fun and go out and make plays. So it's not about just one guy necessarily. It's about, offense, defense, special teams, all three phases, making a lot of plays, and different guys each week, making plays during the game.
Coach, you mentioned the talent on this team, and there are guys, no doubt, that are going to be playing on Saturdays. There'll be household names around the South very shortly. Tell us about some of the guys that folks around the state that are tuning in Thursday night, some of the names that probably will stand out to them.
I'm not a guy to single guys out. I think that's what makes us special. I think that, if I started singling out, I'd have to name about 25 or 30 guys on the team. Because we've got so many guys that are doing, so many different things. And, so many times that, you might think one or two guys get all the stars and get all this and that, but it's really those other guys that are out there that, that may be on special teams, not playing a whole lot, or this role or that role, offensive line, people that don't get a lot of the credit, don't press, that are the ones that are actually doing most of the work. So I go back, that's what I think has made this team special. It's a whole bunch of guys. It's not just one or two. We've had, like I said, we've had games where we literally, 2 weeks ago, we took 5 touchdowns to 5 different people, and so we've had games, we've had 6 guys score, and, it's so many different guys that are playing, from week to week. I think that's what makes it special. It's what makes it fun to watch. It's what makes it, fun to be here, is there are so many guys doing so many fun things.
Coach, in your high school coaching career as a head coach here in Alabama at Scottsboro, Pinson Valley, now at Central Phoenix City, you've averaged over 9 wins a year, won state championships, made deep playoff runs. In your mind, obviously you're a guy who knows better than anyone what it takes to get to the Super 7, to win a state championship. And it's a grind going for all the way through the summertime, then 10 regular season games, 4 playoff games. What's kind of your philosophy on handling that grind of the season of what could potentially turn out to be a 14-game season?
I think you got to know when to grind. I think that's the key, and I think most people in this state understand that I'm not an Alabama fan, but I've got a whole lot of respect for Coach Saban. And, one day he was in there recruiting when I was at Pinson, and we got to talking about that. And he got to talking about how long the season is and how he's had to sort of adapt and do different things during the off season, during the summer, for not only his players but his coaches also. And it made a lot of sense to me. And so we've done a lot of things over the past several years of knowing that it's going to be a long season. And we want it to be a long season. So let's don't make it a long summer. Let's don't make it a long off season. Let's work when it's time to work, but let's also take some time off when it's time to take off. And so, the season is definitely a grind. There's no way you can get away from, grinding throughout the season. We had an off week last week that we were able to freshen up, take some time off. But we're right back to the grind now and really have 5 weeks left in this thing, really 5.5 to get where we want to be. And so, I think you got to be really smart during the off season, during the summer, of not overdoing it during those times. So at this time, this is when you want to be peaking. This is when you want the guys to be having fun. This is when you want to be around the players. This is when you want the players to be around you. This is when it's fun. So this is the time of the year that you want everybody having a lot of fun and everybody fresh and everybody going. January and February, they're tough. But that's not the time when you really want to be around each other. It's these 5.5 weeks right here that are a special part of the season.
Coach, thank you for the time. Best wishes to your team coming up in the game with Oxford and also throughout the rest of the season into the Class 7A playoffs. Be a joy to watch your football team play against Oxford right here live statewide on WOTM and our AHSAA Game of the Week. Thank you so much for the time this week.
Thank you.
Patrick Nix, head coach of the Central High School Red Devils of Phoenix City, Thursday night live here on WOTM, taking on the Oxford Yellow Jackets.
Every bank has their own app, but it's just that, theirs. At AmFirst, our app was made for you, so you can personalize your dashboard, pay your bills, and redeem points for rewards you'll love. Get the app made for you at AmFirst.
We are back on the AHSAA Weekly, presented by America's First Federal Credit Union. A huge game in the state of Alabama, one of the biggest high school football games in the country for that matter, last Friday night at the Hoover Med in Birmingham. 9-0 Hoover, 9-0 Thompson. Thompson ranked number 1, Hoover ranked number 2 in Class 7A in the state of Alabama. A huge high school football game, the Class 7A Region 3 championship on the line. So let's take you out to Hoover right now for this region championship. Here come the Thompson Warriors onto the field, looking for their 3rd consecutive state championship. Hoover with a 3-0 lead, and this is J.J. Pegues with a 22-yard touchdown run. That made it 7-3 Thompson. But Hoover comes back and they take the lead. This is Bennett, the Hoover quarterback, with a 16-yard touchdown pass. That made it 10-7. Thompson responds. Connor Harrell, their outstanding quarterback committed to North Carolina, connects with Amari Bolden, a 47-yard touchdown pass. That made it 14-10 Thompson. Still in the second quarter, Harrell drops back and launches it. This time he is going to find Jalen Ward for the 71-yard touchdown pass. Thompson now leads it 21-10. Then with seconds to go, Hoover 4th and goal at the 1-yard line. You'll see that coming up right here. And Thompson's defense is going to get the stop right here on this 4th down play at the goal line. And obviously with a big play like that in a big game like this, that Thompson defense goes crazy right here. Thompson is going to maintain with that goal line stand a 21-10 lead at the half. But it was going to be Hoover coming back in the second half with a couple of touchdowns, and they win the game late as they beat Thompson by a score of 24-10. There's that Thompson defense going crazy. It was all Thompson at this point in time at the half as they go over to their fans there in the student section. But it was not to be because, as we said, Hoover came back with a couple of touchdowns in the second half to win the game 24-21. Christina Chambers of the Thompson Warrior Network caught up with the head coach of the Thompson Warriors, Mark Freeman, after the game.
It was a good football game, and, you know, nobody wins them all. And are we upset? Yeah, but the real season fixing to start in 2 weeks for us. And we got to come back, get ourselves ready to go, and play football. Man, we got great men. We got great coaches. That's a good football program over there, and there's nothing to hold our heads about. We're ready to go. I really don't have a comment on that. You know, Zach went in and had to play quarterback for us, and it was down the road. It's going to be good for him that he got this experience tonight. And we, you know, personally, you don't talk about going undefeated. You talk about being a state champion. And so this is just a test for us to go get better, find out who we are, go get better, and our guys will, man. Like I said, we got great guys, great coaches, great players, and we'll bounce back. It's football, man. You can't win. You know, you're not guaranteed to win a game. So we'll get them refocused. They'll be fine. You know, and you face adversity, and football teams, you got to win in spite of adversity sometimes. And this will be a lesson for them in their life. You know, we serve the same God we did when we drove in the parking lot here. And life is about overcoming adversity. That's how you grow. You grow from adversity, some things that don't go your way, and we will grow. And I'm telling you, we will be a better football team from this.
Also last Thursday night, the game you saw right here on WOTM, our AHSAA Game of the Week, 1A action. We had some 7A action, now some 1A action from Ottaughville, Maplesville, and Ottaughville. Here with a recap of the game, WOTM's Gerhard Mathangani and Mickey Shadricks.
And Thursday night lights from Ottaughville High School. Quite a performance from 1A Maplesville as they knock off Ottaughville 42-6 in a battle from 1A Region 4. Mickey Shadricks and Gerhard Mathangani with you. A very complete game by Maplesville, offensively, defensively, and special teams tonight.
If you're Coach Abbott, you have to be really pleased with the way your team performed. Of course, not pleased the way it started, even though Maplesville got the first fumble of the game. Moments later, they fumbled the football. About the only mistake this offense made throughout the course of the game. Nice play and return there by Antonio Hardy Jr., getting the scoring going for Ottaughville, but the Eagles would only have those points on the board to show for the entire game. Brady Harrison, a guy we spotlighted at the beginning of the game, really made his mark in the game, establishing the run there with a long run, touchdown run. Ja'Kavian Jackson got in the mix, scoring his first touchdown of the game. The defense really did well and helping set up the offense with short fields. Harrison, Jackson, as well as Jonathan Wilson all had great games running the ball out of the backfield. Harrison scoring a touchdown here. The backbreaker was the onside kick, and returned there by Maplesville, recovered by Maplesville, into the end zone. with the Red Devils once again, with Jackson scoring his second touchdown of the game, a pair of touchdowns for both Jackson and Harrison. They sat at 28 points at the half, 28-6 lead. Special teams, as you just mentioned, playing really well for Maplesville going into this one. And then in the third and fourth quarters, it's using your team to really put the finishing blow on this football team for Montaukville, and that's exactly what they did. A really dominating performance all the way around.
We're joined again by Coach Abbott of Maplesville. Coach, we mentioned at halftime how much your offensive line had dominated that first half, and really when you look at this game, it was your ability to basically move the line of scrimmage at the snap, and Brady Harrison running behind those big linemen. You just controlled the game from start to finish.
Yes, sir, and we've done that all year, and of course, you know, it's we don't try to hide. I mean, we're not flashy. That's how we play. We just line up. We have to move people off the line of scrimmage, and Brady gets behind those big old boys, and he just runs hard for 4 quarters. All of them just play hard for 4 quarters.
We talked about Harrison at the beginning of the game and then at halftime, and we talked about him just a second ago, but you also have a nice little complement there of skill players to go along with that really intense offensive line. We talked about the offensive line. It gave them a big shout out there in the first half. But guys like Jackson and guys like Gill that were able to come up with big plays, also Wilson, just tell us a little bit about the array of talent you have and being able to spread it out. That way it's not all on Brady Harrison's shoulders.
You know, Brady establishes that middle dominance, and then of course that gives people like Jacavian and Juicy Wilson and Britton Worrell and like you said, Coleman Gill opportunities to get in there and do what they do best, which is kind of a slash and dash type of run game that we can also add to the equation. So yes, their athleticism makes that whole thing a little bit more dangerous to try to stop, definitely.
Coach, before we let you go, just want to ask you about Jacavian Jackson's condition. I know he had a couple of touchdown runs tonight, but he injured, I think, a lower leg injury and went out of the game, tried to come back in. Is he okay?
Yes, sir. He's fine, and he had a sprained ankle. Of course, he came back in himself, and when he said he was ready to go, he's one of the toughest kids that we have on our football team. So we let him go that last play down here on the 5. But when we went in the dressing room, we kind of analyzed where we were at in the game and, you know, what we have left, hopefully, to play for. We decided it would be best just to let him ice that thing on the sideline and just get ready for the playoffs in 2 weeks.
Well, Coach, congratulations. You remain unbeaten at 9-0, and look forward to watching you the rest of the way and obviously in the postseason, which is right around the corner.
Oh, yes, sir. We sure do. And appreciate y'all coming out and giving us the opportunity to play on TV. It's a big honor for these kids to be able to do this. It's something they'll never forget. And we appreciate y'all and all y'all do promoting high school sports.
6 rushing touchdowns in the game for Coach Abbott's team tonight. 3 from this young man, Brady Harrison, as Maplesville improves to 9-0 on the season.
That is going to wrap up this week's edition of the AHSAA Weekly, presented by America's First Federal Credit Union. 2 reminders. 1, don't forget that huge matchup, 6A Oxford, 7A Central of Phoenix City, live Thursday night right here on WOTM in our AHSAA Game of the Week. And join me back here on Saturday morning, 9 a.m. We will be live from Montgomery with the AHSAA State Football Playoffs Bracket Reveal Show. We will give you all of the playoff matchups coming up. We'll set the bracket for classes 1A through 7A on Saturday morning. All of that coming up this week on WOTM, and we'll see you back here next week on the AHSAA Weekly.